Hello, my friends, my fellow artists. I am here to paint with you. Today I thought it'd be kind of fun to do a little bit of watercolor experimentation. And so I'm not sure exactly how this will end out because I haven't planned the image ahead of time. As you all know from my abstract videos, sometimes my favorite kind of painting is just starting, which makes some people a little bit nervous, but as a teacher, I feel like sometimes that's really the way that we can learn, is not by worrying about the outcome, but by just stepping out into something new and seeing where the media takes us. Without further ado, I'm going to show you the mess of my mind. Don't laugh. Here it is. I don't know if you can see the whole image. It's pretty crazy. Let's see if I can move it a little bit. I won't make you dizzy. It is a very busy piece of art, but boy, did I have a lot of fun doing it. So I'm at the point now where I feel like, okay, I think I've explored it to the point that I have to stop. But now that doesn't mean that we're going to make this, because I could not do this again if I tried. So I'm sorry my camera's shaking just a little bit when I tried to position that. But anyway, so this is done with watercolor. And it's got multiple layers. Lots of bright colors. And full disclosure, I was not happy with my black ink. So I went back and I used India ink for the black parts to really punch those colors out. So if you're not happy with the darkness of your watercolor as far as your blacks, you can actually do it with India ink. And I used a speedball ink, a super black India ink. I'll show you. It's this one here. And I just put it in a little tiny well and just painted with it really small with a small brush. Okay, so that's my suggestion. The other thing I also did at times was to use a blow dryer to dry my work in between layers. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to set this aside. This is not what we're doing, but I want to show you kind of how I began that piece. This is a piece of watercolor paper. I'm not sure the poundage. I'm pretty sure it's kind of it does have a little bit of tooth to it, but it's, I've ripped it. You can see the deckled edge here. I just ripped this giant piece of paper enough to make some place for us to paint today. So I got this nice sumi brush that I'm going to wet down. I'm wiggling these bristles so that we get the sizing out of it. And then we're going to use this, and we're going to start with this sumi brush. Now I have a variety of other round brushes that are multimedia brushes. I've got a big flat brush, a medium flat brush, and 4 different rounds. A large, a medium, and a small, and another little detail brush that's like this big. I'm not sure what all we'll use. So I'm going to get this wet and let's just begin. I have no idea what we're going to do. It's probably going to be abstract. I am trying to get my viewers relaxed with not knowing the outcome. Now, I have some paints in this palette. My palette is very messy. As you can see, I've sprayed water in it. I don't worry about having a messy palette. Some people do. I'm going to start with this. It looks sort of like a cadmium red, and I'm actually going to be really happy to be done with these watercolors because I'm not sure what brand they are, but they're very grainy. So I am working up a well with water. You can see that. I'm just wiggling it around, tickling this big chunk of paint that I have. My paint's very grainy for some reason. I don't know if it's just old or it got dusty or what happened, but a lot of it, I want to make sure that I get it mixed up really well and that I have plenty of water and pigment in my well. And I'm going to start with this bright red. It's sort of, kind of reminds me of cadmium red, sort of a bright orangish red, maybe like the color of a poppy. And you can use a spray bottle too to spray out your thing. So let's just start by making some marks and learning about this brush, okay? So I'm just going to start, I put my thing really close so that you could see the strokes that I'm making. Usually I work a little higher up, but for right now, I want you to see kind of how I'm doing this. Okay, so let's start off with making some marks. I'm going to press my brush and then lift my brush up. And I'm going to drag my brush, press it down again. And you can see the variety of marks that you can make with these brushes. And these were used, still are used, in China and Japan for writing Chinese and Japanese characters, and you can do a lot with them. You can do little tiny fine lines like this, and then when you press your brush, you can get a fat line. And I'm right now realizing that I'm working off my screen. I might need to pull my camera up a little bit. Let me pull my camera up just a little bit, because it's going to be too hard for you to see. I wanted to show you up close, but I think that that is going to end up Let's try that. Sorry about that, my friends. No, that's not very professional of me. Sometimes when you're doing this, it's hard because you got to see what angle you're at. All right, so we've made some marks with our brush. This I call a sumi brush. It's a bamboo stick with some bristles. So let's get some big areas of color. Let's not be afraid of color. Okay, and then I think I might put something maybe over here coming down. And I'm turning my brush to get different lines. When I press my brush down, I get thick lines. And when I leave my brush just at the tip, my lines stay skinny. That can be really fun. All right, while this is still wet, let's work in some dark red. I have this sort of deep red. And see how messy my palette is. I put these paints in there a long time ago. So let's drop in some deep reds into this bright red. I do have a little hair there that I can see. Let's set these here and see what happens. I feel like this paint has like some gum arabic or something in it that causes it to be really foamy, and or maybe it's that I'm just blending it too much. I don't know. Put a little bit more water in there. We're going to add more water to our pigment and drop it in to the places that are already wet. Just the slightest little touch. And let's just see what our painting does. Now you could use an image that you wanted to do and have the same techniques, but sometimes I feel like I just don't get as much out of painting when I'm forcing myself into something rigid. Sometimes that's fun, but for me as an artist, I enjoy. Let's bring this line across here. Bringing some darks in here. And maybe we could wash back in some lighter areas here in a minute. Now, what makes this interesting are a couple things. The fact that it's free form makes it interesting, but it's also that it goes from thick to thin and light to dark. So if you want your image, even if it's non-representational, meaning it's not about a subject, if you want it to be exciting, you need to have thick and thin lines, and you need to have lights and darks in your work. Okay, so I'm going to switch colors. I'm going to go ahead and switch brushes as well. That was really fun using that brush. We might come back to it later, but right now, let's just fill in some of our fields of other colors. I'm going to go ahead and rinse it well and use my paper towel. You can just use any watercolors for this, okay? You can use any kind you have, Crayola or pan color, or these are from a tube or were from a tube at some point. And I think what we might do is lay in some yellows and bright oranges. Let's see what happens with that. So we've got this red that we made, and then I also want to add yellow in there to create kind of an orangish color. And I don't know that I'll do a ton of orange, but maybe a little bit. Maybe this will be like fire. I don't know. And I've got my brush here. I think I might use it, even though I said I wasn't going to use it. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to leave some spaces in between. And lay in a couple of oranges in here. Pressing my brush down, giving it a wiggle. I dragged into that red a little, which looks really, really cool. So let's do that a little bit on purpose. Let's see what happens here. We'll drop some orange into that red. Maybe connect these two here. And let those things be happy together. Alright, I'm going to turn my work a little bit just because our workspace is so small. I'm trying not to tip it too much because we don't want our colors to do things we don't want them to do. Alright, let's connect these two. And maybe something here. I'm going to hit that red again and just sort of dab it here to let those colors do something interesting. And while it's still wet, it's kind of a fun time to play inside. Wherever you've painted, that's where, and the water is where those colors are going to mingle. They're not going to go to the dry paper unless you tell it to. So let's go ahead and add in some yellows. Let's be unafraid, shall we? Just a few yellows. This is sort of turning into fire. I just really like this brush. I don't know. I didn't plan on doing most of the work with this brush, but the other thing I want to remind you too is that watercolor is about water and color, so you want to make sure you're giving your pigment plenty of place to work. And then also remembering that it's also about layering. Layering ideas and layering color upon color. Some of that layering can be done right from the start, like we're doing right now, and some of it can be done on layer 2, layer 3. I've known some people that really think that watercolor should be done really quickly, and their work is beautiful. And I know other people that will spend weeks and weeks, months on a watercolor. Watercolors that are very detailed and representational tend to take time. And kids usually are coloring and then they're like, I'm done. That's also fun. All right, so we have this. Now let's do something really unexpected. Let's do something a little bit crazy. Let's put some green. Let me see if I can show you this without messing up my painting. Let's put some green here. And maybe even this yellow already got contaminated with green. So I'm going to add this sort of contaminated yellow-green over here and see what kind of color. Oh, I'm messing with the camera. Sorry about that. Let's make some sort of a happy, bright green. I'm going to activate this a little bit more. It's sort of tickling that dried up paint in there. I'm sure these real purist watercolorists are probably laughing at me. But I just do what I do. I don't worry too much. Okay, so let's come in here and lay in some really different colors. Okay, so opposite on the color spectrum from red is green. So let's throw in some green right next to this, not touching. Let's fill this whole space with that palish green. In this case, I don't want to touch that red. And then I'm going to add some water here to sort of fade it out. And then I'm going to come in here with even more of that pigmented green. Make some texture up next to this thing here. And then maybe straight from the pan. Being very playful. Let's see what happens. Okay, and then I might even wash in some blue. So let's see what kind of blue I can get into down here. I have some sort of darkish blue. That's one of the problems with working with this gigantic palette, is it's not very convenient. But it sure is nice to have all the paint I like. Let's drop some blues in over here, maybe. It's a little dark. I wonder what would happen if we use our tip of our brush and brought that right in here. Can we do it? This blue is a little dark. And we hit that right there at that orangish red color, which kind of looks good. What happens if we hit this yellow? Ooh, that turned out to something, didn't it? Not sure if I like it. But there it is. Okay, turning my work again. Just to sort of get a new perspective on it. I'm going to grab my large round brush. It looks something like this. And I'm using multimedia brushes that work for different media. I overall like them. Watercolor brushes are awesome sauce, and having good brushes is great, but when you're a mom, you need something that works for as many things as you can get. All right, so let's lay in some of this blue, which is not the same blue I used here. It's a light blue. then some water. And we're just going to touch that edge with the water and see what happens. Let it do its happy thing. Let's put some of that pretty blue over here. We've got this section, you can see here, that's blue. So I want to kind of balance that with something strong and blue here. So visually I'm looking at, if I squint my eyes, what value does it have? Is it strong? Is it light? And also the hue. Does it pull the viewer's eye across the paper? And that's what we want to do. We want the viewer to look at our art and then want to continue to look around the paper. Let's add some other areas here. Let's put some splatter, maybe a little bit of splatter over here. Not sure what to do with that area, so I'm going to turn that around. Let's put a little splatter. Let's put just a little bit of this blue over here, and it's okay if it gets on the other parts. It's exciting. Maybe we want a little bit of that splatter over here. Okay, and then I can't decide if I want purple or if I want to leave that white. Some of these areas here, it's kind of nice to have it white. I wonder what you think. There's part of me that wants to put something there and part of me that wants to leave it. So I don't know, I may think about it. Let's take a break here and let our paintings dry for a little bit. Okay, I'll see you back in a few minutes.